Happy Sunday, Bengals fans. Welcome into Bengals Breakdown. I am your host, Stone Shields. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be breaking down a 7-round mock draft. ESPN put one out last week. Matt Miller of ESPN, 7-round mock drafts for all 32 teams in the National Football League. We're going to be breaking down all 7 rounds for Cincinnati. Well, really all 6 rounds because they only have 6 picks currently as we sit here on March 30th, 2025. But that's all coming up here on today's show. Plenty of good, plenty of bad, I feel like, on this mock draft from Matt Miller. Just a heads up, I am doing a little solo producing here on today's show. So if you see me look down, whatever the case may be, just trying to do multiple things here at once as we progress through today's show. Now, if you want me to do another mock draft like today's video for me right now, we have 2 mock drafts that I have done that are out on the channel. You can take a look at those. You got to scroll down a little bit through all of our videos, but 2 of them have been done by us. Hoping to do another one. Let me know if you want me to do another one by liking today's show. I feel good about the first one we did. Mixed emotions kind of on the second one, so definitely want to get back to it. If you want me to do another one like today's show for me right now, trying to get over 500 likes here on this video. So help us out. Like that video, hit that thumbs up icon if you haven't done so already. All right, let's break down the picks that transpire in the first round before Cincinnati ultimately makes a selection at number 17 overall. He's got Cam Ward. This is Matt Miller once again for ESPN. Cam Ward going 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans. Abdul 2 to Cleveland. Man, that would be certainly a handful to have to deal with him and Myles Garrett twice a year for the foreseeable future if you are the Cincinnati Bengals. Shedeur Sanders off the board at number 3, adding to that quarterback room of Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Travis Hunter goes 4 to the New England Patriots. Mason Graham 5 to the Jaguars. And 6 is Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona. Moving on here to these next 6 picks. Armand Membou, a guy that I certainly love, probably not going to be available at number 17 overall. Miller's got him going 7 to the Jets. Jalon Walker 8 to the Panthers, another guy that I really like here in this draft. Number 9, Jahdae Barron of those Texas Longhorns going to New Orleans. Ashton, Jeanty, running back, going at 10 overall to the Chicago Bears. Will Johnson 11 to the Niners, and Tyler Warren 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. 4 more here before Cincinnati ultimately makes a selection at number 17 overall. Will Campbell sliding a little bit down the board here. A lot of people view him as the top offensive lineman in this draft. Armand Membou kind of taking over that top spot, it feels like a little bit here. Regardless, Campbell goes 13 overall to the Dolphins. Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan, he goes 14 overall to the Colts. Jahdae Campbell off the board at 15. We spent a lot of time talking about Jahdae Campbell. Same, too, with Mike Green, who goes off the board here at 16 out of Marshall, going to the Arizona Cardinals. 1 pick before Cincinnati. So those are all the guys that are off the board according to Matt Miller. Who does he have Cincinnati taking? How about Emmanwori, round 1, number 17 overall safety out of South Carolina? Honestly, I like this pick a lot for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Emmanwori is going to be an absolute stud in the NFL, and I think he is ready to contribute right now. Let's take a look at what Matt Miller had to write about Emmanwori and his potential fit with the Cincinnati Bengals. He said, while Trey Hendrickson's trade request is out there, for now, we're assuming that cooler heads will prevail and the 2024 NFL sack leader will stay in Cincinnati. With Hendrickson in the fold, the Bengals desperately need a playmaker in the secondary. The 6'3", 220-pound Emmanwori is a Derwin James Jr. clone in size, strength, speed, and playmaking ability. He put on a show at the Combine, running a 4.38 40 and leaping 43 inches in the vertical and 11.6 in the broad jump. He also produced on tape in 2024 with 4 picks, 2 returned for touchdowns, and 88 tackles. Line him up at safety and let him spy Lamar Jackson twice a season. Like I mentioned, I think Emmanwori is ready to come in at that safety spot and make an impact in the NFL immediately. He is a big guy, but he also flies around, and he is a willing tackler, and he absolutely lays the wood. Cincinnati really needs to improve at that safety spot, and it feels like to me that the front office and Duke Tobin, Zach Taylor, coaching staff, they're kind of content with running things back at that safety spot. That's just kind of the vibe I'm getting about this team. And I think, as I've said multiple times here on the show, I think that would be a tremendous mistake if Cincinnati just opts to run it back with Jordan Battle and Geno Stone. Geno Stone, of course, you brought in from Baltimore last offseason during free agency, and it kind of was a disaster until the last few weeks of the season when you were able to play some weaker competition. Stone started to play better football then, but Emmanwori is a guy that could come in and really rejuvenate your defense there on the back end. He can make some splash plays for you. He can create some turnovers, and he can create some big hits as well. And as I mentioned, he is an outstanding tackler. How many tackles did you miss on defense if you're the Cincinnati Bengals last season? It felt like really endless amounts of tackles were missed. If Emmanwori, and Malachi Starks, by the way, was still available here, and if you watch the show, you know how high I am on him. But if one of those two safeties are there, and that top edge rusher that you've got your eyes on is not there, I think safety really should be a consideration at number 1 for Cincinnati in their first round, number 17 overall. And I think Emmanwori would fit in great to Al Golden's defense, and I really think that would be a home run type of pick for Cincinnati. Leads us to the pinned comment of today's video. What would your one-word reaction be if Cincinnati ultimately did select Nick Emmanwori in the first round at number 17 overall? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If that ad comes here on YouTube, totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down there. Let me know what you think. Now, this second pick here is pretty awesome. That Matt Miller's mock had James Pierce Jr. sliding to number 49 overall in the second round. We've talked about James Pierce Jr. a lot as a potential first-round candidate for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, seems like some people out there, it's kind of split, the opinion on James Pierce Jr. Some people have him sliding out of the first round, whereas some people still think the ceiling, the upside is so high that he should still be taken in the first round when you're talking about a guy like James Pierce Jr. Really, there are some question marks, as we've talked about here on the show. With James Pierce Jr., definitely 2023 was a better season for him than 2024, which can be, a red flag for some people, right? I would like the guy that you're drafting to kind of be playing their best football going into the draft process, going into the NFL. Certainly don't think that was James Pierce Jr., despite the fact, he didn't have a horrible season. Still had 7.5 sacks for the Volunteers in 2024. But, man, if you can get him in the second round, I think that would be a steal. No telling on whether or not he will be, ultimately able to slide that far. But James Pierce Jr. for me is a guy that I have a lot of concerns about taking him at 17 overall. But if you can get a safety of the future in the first round and then an edge rusher like James Pierce Jr., who I still think can contribute on pass rushing downs for you, I think that would be an awesome first 2 picks for the Cincinnati Bengals. Really happy with Matt Miller has there. Some disagreements that will come around the corner here. But, man, if Pierce Jr. falls to you in the second round, I think you take him. We will continue with our mock draft here that we are breaking down, Matt Miller's mock draft of ESPN. But do want to give a shout-out to our friends over at Fanatics. Let you guys know that Bengals draft hats, actually, are out and on sale right now. You can get yours today, chatsports.com/Bengals draft hats. There's a bunch of cool ones up there. We're going to have some more pictures for you guys available on videos coming up this week. Just got the one right there, but they've got a ton of new hats there over on Fanatics. Really encourage you guys to check some of those out. One more time for you guys, that's chatsports.com/Bengals draft hats. Been saying sideline hats for so long. I was getting used to that. But Bengals draft hats, and that link, by the way, will be in the comment section and the description of today's show. All right, third round, round 3, pick number 81, Quincy Riley, who is the guy that Matt Miller has the Cincinnati Bengals taking. And he's got, Riley being a guy that could really help them at that nickel spot. Now, this is where I start to have issues with what Matt Miller is doing here with this mock draft when you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. You've gone now 3 picks, and you haven't picked an offensive lineman. I think that certainly can be an issue. It's up in the air with me, 50-50 on whether or not you take a corner. I think you definitely need to get better at that cornerback spot. It's just a matter of, hey, you only got 6 picks, and you got lots of needs to fill. And it feels like Cincinnati, based on what they did, or didn't do, rather, in free agency, seems pretty content on just kind of rolling it back with the guys that they have at that cornerback spot. Again, Matt Miller mentioned that Riley could be a nickel kind of guy for Cincinnati. And I think he would fit into that spot really well. You have some questions there with his size. I think he definitely needs to get a little bit stronger in the weight room and what have you. But I think Dax Hill is a guy that might take over that spot for Mike Hilton. Now, Mike Hilton right now still hasn't been signed anywhere, so there's still a chance that he could come back with Cincinnati. He did put a post out on Twitter kind of leading up to free agency that certainly seemed like he would not be back as a Cincinnati Bengal, but Quincy Riley, according to Matt Miller, is a guy that could fit in at that nickel spot. But I think the Bengals probably have plans for Dax Hill to get in on that spot, assuming he's able to come back from injury well. He was having a phenomenal start to his season last year before getting hurt. Now, he was playing more on the outside, but Dax Hill is kind of a Swiss Army knife guy, and he can really play all those positions really along the secondary. And, I don't think necessarily Cincinnati needs to go out and get another nickel, but if they fall in love with a guy like Riley, I don't see any issues with adding to their cornerback room, which is a room, by the way, that already has a ton of youth. Do you want the Bengals to draft a corner? Let me know in the comment section of today's show. Type Y for yes or N for no. I'm kind of split here. The reason why I'm split, the room definitely needs to get better. There's no question about that, but your room is already so young. That's why I really wanted to bring in a veteran. Cincinnati obviously has not decided to do that at the cornerback spot as of filming here right now. So we'll see if ultimately they decide to do it. But I do have some hesitancy at bringing in just another young guy at that spot. But let me know regardless in the comment section. Do you want the Bengals to draft a corner? A couple more picks here that we got to get to on Matt Miller's draft. Harold Fannin Jr., tight end, round 4, pick number 119. Now, watching Harold Fannin Jr. in the MAC play for Bowling Green, he was outstanding. I watched a little MAC football. I went to a MAC school myself, so I don't have any issues, watching some MAC football. And he definitely stood out in a lot of those games for Bowling Green. By the way, he didn't test very well at the NFL Combine. Some people get all up in arms about that. I really don't, to be honest with you. My issue here is position. All right, you just brought back Mike Gesicki, obviously. Now he's kind of, just a bigger slot, right? He isn't your prototypical tight end, but you're bringing back guys like Tanner Hudson and Cam Grandy as well. And I think those moves that Cincinnati made this offseason at that tight end spot show me that they don't have any interest in drafting a tight end, even with Eric All Jr. in the injury that he, the setback that he sustained. He's not going to be out there for Cincinnati at all this next season. So I get why Matt Miller would have them taking a tight end, probably just thinking about that Eric All Jr. injury. But I don't like this pick at all, to be completely honest with you. If I'm talking about picking a tight end in Harold Fannin Jr. in the 4th round, you got so many holes to fill along the offensive line and your defense. By the way, we're sitting here in round 4. Miller still hasn't have Cincinnati taken an offensive lineman. That, I think, is a huge mistake. Fannin Jr. is the guy that I like, but I just don't get this fit here in Cincinnati taking him in the 4th round. And kind of to piggyback on that, this fit here makes even less sense for me. Talking about getting a receiver here, Brew McCoy, round 5, pick number 153, taking him out of Tennessee, making him your second Tennessee Volunteer that you are taking in this draft. McCoy's a fine receiver. You just can't, I don't think you can add to the receiver room through the draft. You have 6 picks, and you got the best receiver room, in my opinion, in the National Football League. You got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You just signed them to monster deals, and you got guys like Yoshi that I have a ton of confidence in. Charlie Jones, who I think the Bengals still have some confidence in, despite the fact he really hasn't been able to do much in his career because of injuries. I just don't understand drafting a receiver when you only have 6 picks. Again, Brew McCoy is a fine player. Doesn't really have much speed, but he's a guy that's got some sure hands, can be a target for you in the red zone. I just don't understand taking a receiver. I get it. You don't want to sit there and be like, well, it's not just about drafting the position, right? If you fall in love with a player, you take that player, right? I don't have a problem with that, but really there are so many needs on this football team, and receiver is the last possible need that comes to mind when I'm thinking about the Cincinnati Bengals here. So that just kind of makes me scratch my head here. Taking a guy like Brew McCoy, I would like to take an offensive lineman in the 5th round. See if you can't mold him into a potential starter or whatever the case may be, or another guy on defense. I just don't see tight end and receiver taking both of those positions in this draft when you only have 6 picks as of right now. Doesn't make much sense to me. Last pick here for the Cincinnati Bengals, round 6, pick number 193. Finally, Matt Miller has Cincinnati taking an offensive lineman, Jonah Monheim. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. But Jonah's a guy that played at USC, and he's got some versatility in terms of where he can line up. He is listed as a center, but the Bengals, obviously, if they were to take him, would be focusing on him playing some at that guard spot, because really that is the Bengals' weakest spot along the offensive line at this point. And I do think that flexibility that Jonah has is very intriguing when you're talking about Cincinnati and potentially landing a guy like him. I think they like their offensive linemen to come in and be able to play multiple different positions. If somebody goes down, you got to be able to rotate and play at least one of those positions, one of those 5 positions along the offensive line. And I think Jonah could certainly do that out of USC for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's a late-round guy, right? He's probably not going to, come in and be a great player for you right away, but you're really going to test Scott Peters in the NFL draft when you take an offensive lineman. And again, it might not be early on. It might be some guys that you take at the end. Scott Peters is going to have to develop them into capable players for you for the Cincinnati Bengals. Maybe not necessarily starters, hopefully starters, because in my opinion, you still need 2 guards. You don't just want to run it with Cordell Volson and Cody Ford. But regardless, lots of pressure on Scott Peters, and it'll be interesting to see which guys Cincinnati gets in the draft along that offensive line.